This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential.
Everybody, welcome into Fourth and Frames, where tonight we are going to give you a must, bust, and value player for every, based on their ADP for every team in the AFC East, with our special guest in the house tonight. He is the owner and the editor-in-chief at Fantasy Points. He hosts the Fantasy Points morning show at Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. The man, the myth, the legend, rocking the Philly Fanatics cap. Joe Dolan, talk to me, baby.
Hey, guys, what's going on? Yeah, the Phillies about an hour ago just made a big trade to get Joan Duran from the Minnesota Twins. And it's completely simultaneously, their god-awful bullpen imploded against the Chicago White Sox. So it was a necessary deal. There's no doubt about that. And getting one of the best closers in baseball, I figured I had to rep. It's not the NFC East, but it's the NL East. I had to rep on tonight's show, despite the fact that the Phillies are imploding before my very eyes. Nonetheless, a very good trade. But hey, look, my mental capacity for baseball is obviously stilted right now with training camp happening and everything. It is time to hit the ground running, as it has been since the morning show returned at the beginning of July.
So I want to ask you a question. I heard this morning on your show, which awesome, by the way. I love hearing you back
Appreciate
on the airwaves. You just got back from Europe. You saw Oasis. How was that concert?
It was in the words of Liam Gallagher, it was absolutely biblical. Just a concert where this is going to sound bad, but I don't know. That somebody after the concert said to me, they said Liam sounded really good. And I was like, I wouldn't know. I couldn't hear him over the crowd. And
wow,
normally you would be like, I paid to go see a band, right? I want to hear the band. But I feel like if we went to England to see Oasis for the experience of seeing Oasis in England, there were 90,000 people. And believe me, I like to say I can hold my liquor. I was probably in the bottom 5% of drunkenness at that in that crowd. It was an absolute spectacle. If you just check out the Oasis Wembley videos, you just do a search of that on Twitter, you could see what happened. I'm pretty sure Wembley Stadium almost fell over when they started cigarettes and alcohol. So it was a truly spectacular trip, but one that I'm glad to be back because, look, when you're in this industry and this industry pays your bills and you get the anxiety pinch. And I was not only was I overseas, but I was also 5 hours ahead. So I'm going to bed when it's like 7 p.m. On the East Coast, and NFL news can happen. So it was nice to get back and kind of hit the reset button and be able to get back to analyzing fantasy.
Love it.
Yes, indeed, man. That's what we're here to do tonight, because we are going to talk about the NFC East and those must, bust, and value players. But before we do that, guys, here at Fantasy and Frames, do not forget to like, subscribe, and review anytime a new podcast is short from us drops. Search for all of our podcasts for Fantasy and Frames by name wherever you listen to podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, doesn't matter. We're there. And for our show in particular, make sure to subscribe to the Fourth and Frames podcast and lock in at fourthandframes.com for the latest weekly IDP and Dynasty rankings, articles, takes, news and notes, you name it, you got it. Divisional previews are dropping next week. Just a whole lot of stuff going on. And a large part of that has to do with my man, Aidan, right here. Aidan, tell me how you living tonight, man. What you got coming up for the website? And what else you doing, man?
Yeah, as you can see behind me, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. So, of course, I wrote the AFC East division preview, which will start rolling out next week, actually, all throughout the week. But as for tonight, I'm very excited to be here. We just keep rolling through these podcast previews for these divisions. I'm excited to talk with you guys, of course, our guests. I'm just very excited all around. Training camp's in full swing. We get the NFL Hall of Fame game tomorrow night, preseason, and then week one. It will be here before you know it.
And Jorge, the Washington Commanders fan du jour, the man who carries the torch of Fantasy and Frames. I know you're fired up for the Expo, but tell me, what do you have going on right now? Give me some big Commanders training camp news that you're excited about.
Oh man, I'm excited that Terry McLaurin reported to training camp, and yes, he has a what was it, an ankle injury, quote air quotes. I want
Ankle
to say
injury.
more like a signing the contract deficiency injury we have going on. I hope that is going to happen sooner rather than later. I don't think he would have showed up if there wasn't something on the horizon as far as getting a deal done. So I'm hoping that happens. I'm happy he's there, man, because they need him. One of my friends, his family, to training camp yesterday, and McLaurin was all about giving back to the fans, and so he's like, they gave him autographs, took tons of pictures, just a good dude overall, and you would love to see him get rewarded by a franchise that's quite frankly been through a lot the past the Daniel Snyder era. So hopefully they get a deal done soon.
Yeah, good karma's got to come back to the Commanders at some point. And I'm still feeling so good about the Commanders and the karma because of those throwbacks that they dropped a couple weeks ago. So thank you for that, because the NFL needs more good uniforms and less bad uniforms. That's just where we are. But
we're getting the rivals ones soon.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. As a uniform enthusiast, the touch that really stood out to me on the Commanders uniforms that you don't even realize was missing until they brought it back and made a point was the serifs on the font on the nameplate, which you just didn't even realize was like, oh yeah, that is what they look like in the early 90s, the Joe Gibbs era, right? So it was that was an absolute nice touch. And I presume it's just a precursor for them going back to those uniforms full time, as I'm sure every Commanders fan would support.
Sorry, Rhett. So we have a comment here from Chris B in the chat. So the last time you were on Fourth and Frames, the guys were doing a thing where they would ask guests to sing a lyric from one of their favorite songs. And you gave us two. You gave us one, Brandy, You're a Fine Girl, and California Love by Dr. Dre and Tupac here. Definitely looking forward to this episode, Chris B says. So yes, that if you haven't already, I will put that clip. Sorry, Joe. I'll put that clip for the California Love performance on our socials so that you can enjoy the awesomeness that was Joe Dolan singing California Love.
Oh boy, yeah, famous because we throw grands, guys. Yeah, we'll. I wasn't really in the mindset right now, but yeah, let's see. Hopefully you can dig back into the.
I'll get it. Yeah, absolutely.
Into the archives. Yeah,
it is in the archives, no doubt, guys. But let's go ahead and let's get into some news and notes. Starting with Justin Jefferson having a mild hamstring strain, and he's going to be reevaluated this week. Joe, we'll just start with you. Is it too soon to be concerned, or are we moving him down in the first round based on this news? I feel like he's locked and loaded.
I think it's way too soon to be concerned. Maybe it's a tiebreaker. If you guys are like me, like we're best ball sickos, right? So if I just haven't been in a position to draft Justin Jefferson a ton. You guys know how that is, right? You're not necessarily out on a player, but the way the board falls for you, you just don't end up with a lot of them. I'm not out on him. JJ McCarthy actually happens to be my most drafted quarterback in best ball. And I have a ton of Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson, but it just hasn't fallen. The board hasn't fallen for Jefferson. If you want to move him behind like CeeDee Lamb, I am super high on Puka Nacua this year. That's completely fine, but this is a non-factor for me right now. I think they'll take it easy with him.
And moving into the Texans, where Joe Mixon is expected to be out an extended amount of time with a foot injury. Aidan, how much are you dropping Mixon in your rankings, and what does this do for Nick Chubb for you personally?
Yeah, so I have Joe Mixon right now, RB20, just to lay it out there specifically. If you remember, Rhett, I had Joe Mixon is my bust candidate this year for the Houston Texans, and it feels like it's too obvious now with the whole injury. He is aging. Sure, Nick Chubb, will he come back to full strength? Maybe, maybe not. But I think, like, low-key to keep an eye on somebody here that could have a big rookie year is Woody Marks. He got significantly more draft capital than everyone expected. He is a very talented pass catcher, and the Houston Texans are going to pass a ton, and neither Nick Chubb nor Joe Mixon, if he is healthy, are going to catch the football much. So even with Mixon healthy, I would have taken a shot on Marks, but I think Marks rises up significantly. I'm not saying in final rankings going into the season he'll be higher than Nick Chubb, but I think who benefits from this the most is Woody Marks in that pass catching role.
Yeah, it's hard to not see a situation where he doesn't start to carve out a role, because we're kind of starting to see it, pass heavy teams. And I anticipate Houston being that this year with Joe Mixon aging a little bit Chubb aging a little bit. And we talked about the Nico Collins effect last week, where we feel like he should just be in for a boatload of targets this year with how many changes are going on in that wide receiver room. So I do anticipate them throwing a lot this year. Jorge, we're going to touch on this briefly because I know Joe is going to talk about this particular player in our Dallas section, but Jake Ferguson agreed on a 4-year, $52 million extension. The man's getting paid, and good for him. He's been solid the last couple of years. Jorge?
He has. And you look at what's going on in Dallas, the uncertainty at the running back position. And I think that's like the nicest way I could phrase that, the uncertainty, quote unquote, air quotes. They are going to be passing a lot in this offense. I have him as my tight end 11 in redraft right now. So yeah, definitely. I like the fact that they signed him. I like the fact that he's going to be involved in this offense just because of the pass heavy nature it's likely to be. I don't like the dollar amount. I feel like some of that should have gone Micah Parsons' way, if you know what I'm saying, Jerry. Sign edge rusher. Yeah. But it is what it is. So yeah, for fantasy, I'm all on board Ferguson here.
Maybe the biggest fan of this Jake Ferguson contract extension is whatever Cavender twin is dating him right now, because she gets to load up on that free money, baby. Let's go. But then last but not least, really quickly, guys, I was on Twitter today, and Arthur Smith is once again big Arthur Smith and breaking out these 4 tight end sets. Joe, he's just got to be trolling us at this point, right?
Yeah,
he knows.
Has to be. I mean, look. On the other hand, look at their wide receiver depth chart behind DK Metcalf, and you don't really see all that much talent there. I'm wondering if the Steelers are waiting for the Jets to cut Allen Lazard, which feels like it's coming, and then Aaron Rodgers can get one of his boys there. But ultimately, look, they got Johnny Smith for a reason. They're going to run a lot of 2 and 3 tight end sets. I was on the radio with a Steeler fan the other day, and they asked like kind of jokingly, but not 100% joking, like, when are they moving Darnell Washington to tackle? That's the question. And I was like, yeah. I mean, I can see it, but they don't have Jeff Stoutland in that building to help coach him up. But yeah, they will be using a lot of tight ends this year. It's what Arthur Smith does. It's what Arthur Smith loves.
And if we learned anything a couple years ago, before we realized that the Kyle Pitts thing was going to go the way it went, Arthur Smith also loves him some Jonnu Smith based off of how much he played him that year they were together in Atlanta. So whether we like it or not, Jonnu Smith will have a major role in this offense for the Steelers this year. So before we get into our must, bust, and value players for the NFC East, let's talk about our friends over at Trophy Snack, because if you put in your promo code Fantasy and Frames 10, you get 10% off of anything they have in stock. That's right. Anything, whatever you want. Could be a belt, a ring, a trophy, whatever memento you want to have to show your championship success. Trophy Snack can help you out and get it. All you got to do is head over to trophysnack.com, put in that code Fantasy and Frames 10. That is the number 10, not the word 10, by the way. And watch yourself save some money and hook your league up with a great piece of championship memorabilia for your bragging rights this year. That is our friends over at Trophy Snack. So guys, let's get into the NFC East. We're going to talk about those must bust and value players based on the Fantasy Pros expert consensus rankings for half PPR. And we're going to start in Philly, where no shock, it's the best roster in football. Every year they seem to just be making another move that defies logic in the trade market and free agency. People just want to play there. For some reason, their GM has found a way to just pull the wool over everyone's eyes, and they don't even realize that he's doing what he's doing, yet he's still done it for all these years. So, Joe, I'm going to lead off with you. Go ahead and give us our must draft Philadelphia Eagle based on the ECR from Fantasy and Pros for half PPR here in 2025.
Yeah. So I almost went 2 ways here. Number one, first of all, I'm sure you guys have been well aware that a lot of podcasts and morning shows and whatnot are just paying their bills this summer by getting Jalen Hurts clickbait going, like comparing him to this guy, to that guy. Is he better than Cam Newton? All that stuff. But ultimately for our game, the Eagles are kind of boring to talk about. very few players matter for fantasy, and they're all priced fairly. So I had two names that really stood out to me here. Number one is actually my most drafted Eagle, which is Will Shipley. And that is a complete just like, hey, what if Saquon, what if they pull back, or what if the yards and all the touches add up? Will Shipley is like RB 58 by ADP. So he's really affordable, but I that's really contingent on Saquon missing time because Shipley isn't going to have a big role otherwise. So I didn't want to do that. I actually went with Dallas Goedert, who's tight end 13 by consensus ranking. And I just think he's somebody who has the ability to have big games every now and again. And for best ball purposes, which is where I was kind of filtering the lens through, that's a nice guy to have if you're waiting on the tight end position. But I'll be honest, I really struggled with this one, guys, because I think all the Eagles are very fairly priced. Saquon is so expensive. Jalen Hurts is expensive. I wasn't really considering either one of them a must-have. You might consider their passing game low volume, which made A.J. Brown maybe a little bit tougher to have in the second round. So I went with Dallas Goedert, who I think is a perfectly fine low-end tight end 1, high-end tight end 2. If Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown misses time, Dallas Goedert becomes a week winning type of player. But of all the teams that we're talking about today, this is the hardest one for me to come up with a must draft guy, just because I think everybody has the same analysis on the Eagles and it's mostly correct.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, you look at the Eagles and you mentioned it. Jalen Hurts, he's a top 5 quarterback. Saquon Barkley is in that top 3 running back conversation. A.J. Brown's a top 12 wide receiver. Devonta Smith, he's a wide receiver too. Like, everybody is solidly priced.
Yeah, you're not finding anything between the cracks in the couch cushions with the Eagles, right? It's just not going to happen unless there's an injury on this team.
I mean, and you're right about Shipley, because in that exact situation, there are skills there. There is upside there. But we saw what they did last year with Saquon Barkley, and that was with guys who had previous track records of producing in this offense. You had a Kenny Gainwell who had earned Nick Sirianni's trust in the past, yet Saquon comes in between regular season and playoffs, had close to 500 touches, was it last year, Joe?
Yes, it was close to 500 touches, including the playoffs. I mean, 2,500 yards from scrimmage. He had the most yards from scrimmage in any season ever for a running back, beating Terrell Davis when he won the MVP. So obviously, now look, Saquon Barkley is of course going to come out and say, oh, I'm in the best shape of my life. I feel great, blah, 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 all that. But we have to look at the track record, and the track record for running backs coming off that big workload isn't great. Do I think Saquon can defy the odds? I do. I think he takes care of himself. I think the Eagles are a smart organization. But if you look at that history, pivoting to Will Shipley in drafts, especially given how cheap he is, it's a completely viable strategy.
Yeah, you're right about that. So very fair, must draft. Dallas got it because everybody's pretty fairly priced. And Aidan, you're kind of going to allude to that in your bust because you feel like everybody's fairly valued and there's not really a bust, quote unquote, value to be found here. So talk on it.
Yeah, Joe just alluded to it. I totally agree with him. This is arguably the best offense in the NFL. They just won the Super Bowl. And because of it, in my opinion at least, all players in this offense that are fantasy relevant are very appropriately priced. Now, I know for this bust category, there's going to be the big debate relative to where he's going over Saquon Barkley. In my opinion, though, I'm not as worried about it with other people. I know the negative side of it is he had well over 400 touches, almost 500. So will his body break down? It's very rare that RB1 finishes back-to-back years. It's very rare that they finish even at the top of the RB position in back-to-back years. But to compare, Derrick Henry has gotten a ton of touches, like astronomical amount of touches, just like Saquon Barkley for a number of years now, and it doesn't look like he's breaking down anytime soon. So even if they do scale back Saquon touches just a bit, I think that could actually help him because he could be more efficient. But this is just such an elite offensive line, such a trusted infrastructure. So I'll 100% trust it. And one last point here before I end here. I know that everyone says, well, Jalen Hurts the tush push this and that. And, he steals a ton of rushing touchdowns from him. In my opinion, that's just luck. Like Saquon, do you know last year how many times he got tackled down at the 1 yard line? So what if he doesn't get tackled down at the 1 yard line all those times? I think he could cash in even more of those rushing touchdowns. But I'm on the side of the Barkley debate that I think he will be fine. Obviously, I don't think he'll be RB1 or RB2 again, but I have him at RB2 right now, so I'm pricing him that way. But everyone's appropriately priced because they just won the Super Bowl. So that's my take on it.
And I hear you on the Saquon thing. If anybody can divide logic, Joe said it, you said it, it's Saquon. But Jorge, I want to come to you on the Saquon talk real quick because he is the most highly priced Eagles player this year in fantasy football. Let's say the 500 touch curse comes to pass. What's the floor on Saquon Barkley in your mind this year?
Oh, he's definitely still a top 5 fantasy running back, and that might be a little bit too broad. Look, is he going to do exactly what he did a year ago? Probably not. I mean, you never say never, but that probably is not going to be the case. I think there's going to be probably some restoration to some balance, which will go into my sleeper pick or value pick here for the Philadelphia Eagles in a minute. So do I expect the same type of workload from Saquon Barkley, another year older? No, that was a great call by Joe talking about Will Shipley bringing in some added relief and taking some work off of him this regular season for fantasy. So yeah, I still think he's top 5 running back, and you can make the case even with the drop off, he's top 3, like you were alluding to, Rhett.
Yeah, I mean it's so hard to price that guy right now because he's going at the top of your draft. But for me personally, I'm not one to bet against history. Like I know what Saquon Barkley is. I know what he was last year, and I know we don't like accounting for past injuries. But when you have a guy who in the past has had some soft tissue, hamstring, ACL type stuff, lower body injuries, you have to almost put it in the back of your mind. And it almost makes me at least just a tiny bit hesitant. I'm not going to say I'm tanking him, that he's running back 12 or whatever. No, that's ridiculous. But he's my 3 just because I believe so strongly in the skill sets of Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson and the age as well. So you mentioned, Jorge, about your value player. Go ahead and talk about him because he is a guy that I agree with you. Where he's going to wide receiver 23, he is appropriately priced, but there's also some real upside here too. If the Eagles pass the ball more, or if that main wide receiver, A.J. Brown, happens to go down with injury, it's Devonta Smith to the moon.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the wide receivers here, the starting wide receivers for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's basically 1A, 1B, in my opinion, and a strong 1A if A.J. Brown does miss time. You mentioned in half PPR, ECR, wide receiver 23, overall 50. You go back, he is the model of consistency. You go back to 2022 in half PPR scoring. These will all be in half PPR scoring. Wide receiver 16 in fantasy points per game, 23, wide receiver 21. This past season, wide receiver 17. He is the model of consistency for this Philadelphia Eagles passing attack. And I know people are going to tell me, well, Jorge, the passing volume has decreased. They have Saquon Barkley. They're going to be more run heavy. Dallas Goedert, a full healthy season. He's going to be there. That's going to eat into more targets. It's going to eat into production for Devonta Smith. Well, let's go back and look at the targets per game last year when they both were on the field. Weeks 1 through 3, when they were both on the field, Devonta Smith averaging 9 targets a game, and Dallas Goedert 6.7 targets a game. Weeks 14 through 17, 8.3 targets a game for Devonta Smith, 4.25 targets per game for Dallas Goedert. So I'm not really worried about. Then, of course, weeks 6 through 11, 4.7 to 3.5 targets a game. Obviously, there was a down period for that passing offense there for Philadelphia because they didn't really need to rely on it too much because, like you were just talking about, Saquon Barkley kind of just took over for the most part for this season. So even at what I believe to be his floor last year, still being a wide receiver 2, it doesn't get more consistent and more safe than having him. And so I hate to use the word value, somebody who's been such a high performing wide receiver in points per game, but he really is. When you look at the other wide receivers that are around him in ECR, you have Zay Flowers, who finished last year as the wide receiver 36. I personally think Zay Flowers is a better real football player than a fantasy football asset. You look at Rashee Rice. Yes, he finishes the wide receiver 16, but is there going to be a suspension? Is he going to miss time? We don't know that. Jameson Williams for the Detroit Lions, wide receiver 20, but there was a lot of boom and bust in that, wide receiver 20 performance. Xavier Worthy, who knows? The only wide receiver I would say around his ECR I could make the case that he should be ahead of Devonta Smith as Cortland Sutton based off his end of season performance last year. But aside from that, for the Philadelphia Eagles, it really doesn't get better value than Devonta Smith as a solid wide receiver too.
Joe, anything else you want to add to that take? You feel good about where Jorge is?
I think it's perfect. Look, Devontae Smith's a really awesome player. Now, if we get to our bold predictions at the end of the show, I have one for the Philadelphia Eagles that I think will kind of speak to Devontae Smith being a solid value. It might sound like a bold prediction, but I don't think it's that bold. But if we get to that, I'll expand upon what Jorge said a little bit more as it relates to the Eagles passing game.
Sounds good, man. So let's go from Philly and the Fanatics, and with Joe Dolan wearing that gorgeous hat, let's take a step. Let's go down to DC. Let's make Jorge's heart happy. Let's talk Washington Commanders. Last year's surprise team in the NFL, make the NFC Championship game. They retool it this offseason. They don't just run it back. They make acquisitions. They are going all in. They realize they have a franchise quarterback. But Jorge, your must-draft player for the Commanders, he's been around the block a little bit. He's seen the worst of it. He's starting to see the other side of it. He's a guy that has been really solid and really underrated for fantasy football over the past couple seasons, especially last year. So talk about Brian Robinson Jr. at ECR running back 29.
So some people might think and say, well, the obvious answer here for Washington is Jaden Daniels. He's I believe ECR quarterback 3. He is a must draft. Well, if we're thinking about draft strategy and where you're probably going to have to take him in your drafts, is he a must draft at that point? You know, the the late round quarterback truthers out there will say, no, hard pass, load up on skill players. And if we're talking about skill players, you know, Brian Robinson Jr. at ECR 29, let's look at the running backs who come after him in that ECR. Jalen Warren, probably a committee. Tyrone Tracy, negative game script in New York, probably going to be passing the ball a lot more. And then, you know, you don't know what's going on with him in Camp Scatteraboo. Travis Etienne, no one knows what the hell's going on in Jacksonville. You have Javonte Williams, who could potentially have some upside there in Dallas, even though I think they'll probably be more of a pass-heavy offense. Quinshon Judkins, is he going to be suspended? Najee Harris, he literally can't see out of one eye, I think. You know, Jordan Mason potentially splitting time with Aaron Jones, Ramondre, Charbonnet, Tajay Spears. I mean, these are all guys who are the Bs, the backups, the second RBs on their team. Brian Robinson Jr. right now is the RB1 for the Washington Commanders for an NFL team for fantasy. You go back to 2024 last season was the RB27 with 10.8 points per game. He finished as the RB20 per fantasy point status suite. There you go. See that what he did there, Joe? An explosive run percentage. He missed 4 games last year with knee, hamstring, and ankle injuries. I mean, yikes. I mean, he's basically covering the gamut there for all the injuries you could have in the leg. But you go back to 2023, RB21 in fantasy points per game with 12.1 in half PPR, RB16 in yards after contact per attempt, RB25 in touchdown rate, RB23 in touchdowns with 7 or more defenders in the box. And the one that I really like, the RB24 in missed tackles forced versus 7+ men in the box. I say last year, you know, injuries just got the better of him. You go back to a couple of seasons ago with a worse quarterback situation who does not keep the defense honest on the other side. He still performed very, very well. Now you have Jaden Daniels. You have a healthy start to the year. Brian Robinson is that must for the Commanders if you are going to be going wide receiver and or wide receiver tight end heavy in your drafts. And I know, you know, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, I get it. He's looking great. The rookie, I believe he was a 7th round pick this year. Beware rookie training camp hype the first week of training camp, you know, until something happens down the road. Maybe people could consider him a value in drafts. Right now it's Brian Robinson's backfield. Whether that changes or not, you know, that is a far, far, far down the road discussion that people could have. But, you know, again, first week of training camp, a couple days into it, he's looked great. He's looked good. He's running with the ones. I get it. But right now it's Brian Robinson Jr. And if you're drafting for today, if you're drafting to start the season, you want to get Brian Robinson Jr. as your must for the Commanders.
And Jorge, I agree with you because you're right. I mean, there's the camp buzz. And you mentioned the beware week 1 rookie training camp buzz. I can speak from experience because this time last year, there was a whole big hoopla with the New Orleans Saints around Mason Tipton. Let's say it with me now. Who? Mason Tipton. That's right. So
Bub
just to let you know that there is just not a lot going on there with the early hype. Now, if they sustain it, maybe so. But Joe, I want to play a game with you real quick because I'm looking at the ACR, and Jorge mentioned a couple guys below Brian Robinson Jr. I want to see where we think the ceiling might be in terms of where he can go upward. So Pacheco's above him. Do you take Robinson or Pacheco?
Pacheco.
I'd take Pacheco. It's going to be
Okay.
a committee, but I think he could lead it.
Yeah.
Okay. So
speaking of 7th round rookies, I'm hyping up. I really like Brashard Smith in Kansas City, but he's like a last round pick. So
me too.
So I'm taking Pacheco.
Nice. So we're keeping him at 29, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I would take Pacheco over Robinson. Yeah, this is, the Commanders are a team that I kind of like the Eagles. I almost find it hard to find a must draft guy on their team because I think a lot of the prices are fair. Eckler's been a guy I've dabbled in. The Krosky Merritt hype is kind of scaring me a little bit when it comes to Eckler, but yeah, I mean, Jorge's analysis on Brian Robinson is just fine. The thing about Brian Robinson is he's boring. People just don't feel excited to click on his name. He's going in the Pacheco, Tony Pollard range where people just are like, oh, I guess I need a running back. Might as well take one. But no, look, if they're going to, Jaden Daniels opens up the run game, and Brian Robinson is a professional running back. The Commanders could have made a move there to significantly improve. I know they were tied to Omarion Hampton in the pre-draft process. That didn't happen. They've got Brian Robinson there for another year, and that's a completely fair price to pay for somebody who's probably locked into 200 plus carries.
Yeah, fair enough. So you mentioned everybody being pretty fairly valued, but your bust player. Terry McLaurin, an ECR wide receiver, 18. He might be fairly priced, but what scares you about the situation? Yeah,
so the thing about it, look, he's back in camp, and I don't anticipate with the vibes that the Commanders have in general around that organization now. This doesn't scare me the way like a Bengals holdout would scare me. And he finally got good quarterback play for the first time in his career. But I'm a little worried about touchdown regression. He scored 13 touchdowns last year after failing to top 5 touchdowns in each of his last 4 seasons. And he did it on the fewest targets, 117 that he saw over that span. His expected receiving touchdown rate was 3% higher than ever over the previous 3 seasons. His 70.6% catch rate was the second highest over the past 4 seasons among 28 wide receivers with 100 or more targets and an ADOT of 13 yards. So he was getting high variance targets, and he was converting them at a ridiculously high rate. Now he was 15th in wide receiver fantasy points per game in PPR. He was 36th in target share and 41st in route share among all receivers. Combine that with the fact that he had a really high touchdown outcome, a complete reversal of the earlier part of his career, and the fact that the Commanders brought in Deebo Samuel for competition. I'm just not paying up for Terry McLaurin this year. He's too expensive to me.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you ever wanted a true display of the power of the Fantasy Points data suite, you just saw it right there with Joe's breakdown of Terry McLaurin. Because you're sitting there, he's a high touchdown guy. He has fewer targets than he's ever had in the past. The target share is down and everything. It just goes to show that when you break things down, if you look at the deeper analytics, which the data suite allows you to do, sometimes you can maybe unearth some fool's gold there. Not to say that McLaurin is a bad player, but just
far from it.
Yeah.
And Jaden Daniels, look, there's reason to believe in the ascension, right? Jaden Daniels came in and was immediately the best quarterback Terry McLaurin's ever played with. But you also have to look at some of the things where, I mean, this guy's producing efficiency numbers that are unheard of. And that's what scares me about I think he's priced at his ceiling right now.
Yeah, fair enough. So, Aidan, let's go get into your value pick, because last year we got into preseason 2024, and if you told me anything about this guy, my verdict was DOA, dead on arrival, wasn't going for it. But then, lo and behold, Zach Ertz comes out and is pretty dang solid last year, to the point where at ECR tied in 19 this year. You feel good about him, so tell us why.
Yeah, ECR 19. Obviously, last offseason, last draft, there was a lot of hype for rookie, now second-year player Ben Sinnott, and clearly the Commanders don't trust him yet going into year 2, or else they wouldn't have re-signed Zach Ertz. but they did. I know Zach Ertz is kind of a boring player for fantasy purposes at this point in his career. I know there's not much upside here, but in a tight end landscape that we go into every single year and say, oh my God, this is the deepest year in recent memory of tight ends, and then it just ends up being a complete mess after the first 3, 4, maybe top 5 guys. So if you are someone who likes to stream the tight end position every single week, late round tight end, and hammers other skill position players early on in your drafts, I think Zach Ertz is the perfect guy for that scenario, for that case study, just because obviously they have an alpha in Terry McLaurin. Obviously they added Debo. We'll see if he can stay healthy for the first time in a while, because he always had nicks and bruises here and there over his career and what have you. And he'll probably, with an offensive coordinator like Cliff Kingsbury, we'll see if he'll probably get a lot of scheme touches, some jet sweeps, some screens, some designed runs. So they're kind of use him as a maybe gadget guy plus in the middle of the field. But Zach Ertz in the red zone, Jaden Daniels clearly trusts him. And young quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels going into year 2, love to use tight ends. So it's impressive what Zach Ertz did last year at his age. I think he proved everyone wrong. So at tight end 19, I mean, if you stream tight end every single week, do it. And you can cut him after week 1 if you need a new guy or it disappoints or just the old age shows. But like, why not take a swing on a very safe floor in a tight end position that's kind of a mystery this year?
And I love the Ertz call, and here's why. Anybody who watched Jaden Daniels play college football at LSU, especially that last year, he very much looks for tight end involvement. Mason Taylor ate and just left no crumbs playing with Jaden Daniels at LSU.
Exactly.
So, like, it makes sense for Zach Ertz to be one of these guys at tight end 19 if you're streaming the position, or if you're playing the Andrew Cooper yin-yang type thing where you just kind of want a guy who has got some floor. I think Zach Ertz, even if you're getting him a little bit later, is kind of one of those guys you kind of just have to pay attention to, even though it's kind of the Brian Robinson syndrome. You draft Zach Ertz, it's kind of boring. It's not fun. Most people want to, I don't know, roll the dice on Kyle Pitts again, whatever. But at the end of the day, with a position like tight end, you kind of just have to go with something safe every once in a while. So I'm with you on that, man.
Exactly. It's kind of boring, not much upside, but sometimes that's all you need. Plug them in a week and just get some points from them.
Yeah, in a redraft league, you do need the floor as long as the upside. So fair enough. So let's go down to arguably the league's most hated franchise, certainly the division's most hated franchise historically in the Dallas Cowboys. Aidan, we're going to bounce it back to you real quick. I'm fascinated by this must-draft pick right now because I anticipate Dallas throwing the ball a ton. But yet here you are telling me that Javonte Williams at running back 33 in the ECR is a guy that you've got to go out and get. Is it just a price thing? Do you like the upside? Walk us through it.
So it's a little bit of both, right? Obviously, Torres ACL is a rookie, or was it second season in the league? I think it was the second season. But anyway, he's about 2 or 3 years removed that from now. And I feel like I'm kind of going out on a limb here with Javonte Williams just because of the backfield he's set up for. Him, Williams, that is, Miles Sanders, Jaden Blue. We'll see if Phil Maffa makes an impact as a 7th-round pick. Not counting on it, but we'll see. But Miles Sanders is clearly dust now, even more than Javonte Williams. I like Jaden Blue. I actually really like Jaden Blue, and I think it's absolutely worth a shot here and there in the very last pick of your draft just for the upside alone. But he's not a great pass protector, which means he's not going to be on the field, and he's never going to be a volume guy. Just his stature. At Texas, he wasn't. In college at Texas, he wasn't. And Javonte Williams is going to be the pretty good pass protector in this backfield, and they're going to need someone to be the volume guy. I know they're going to pass a ton. We just talked about the Jake Ferguson extension. We talked about the condensed wide receiver sets, 2 wide receiver sets with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. They're going to see a ton of volume. But if there is one guy that I'm keeping an eye on, especially at RB33, and my hot take later on, I won't foreshadow it or spoil it now, but my hot take / bold prediction later on very much has to do with Javonte Williams for the Dallas Cowboys. But just my short thesis here, if you will. I really love Javonte Williams, what he's set up for. If he doesn't do it this year, only 1 year deal, he moves on. He's probably dust. He's done. But this year, I am very, very intrigued in it. And if you're someone that likes to target dead zone running backs, I think this is the perfect guy to do it with in Javonte Williams. I'm just trusting the bounce back here, another year removed from the injury. And like Sean Payton last year, especially towards this back half of the year, end of the year, clearly didn't like Javonte Williams as a true committee. So for whatever reason, that didn't work out there. But I'm just going with a high-powered offense. And he also has legit pass-catching ability out of the backfield. I think that's an underrated part of his game. So I really like Javonte Williams here. Coming into the offseason, I was like, oh my God, this is disgusting. This is going to be a committee. But if there's one guy, I've made a total 180 because if there's one guy that could finish as the RB1 in this backfield, it's Javonte Williams. And my rankings support that because I have him. This might be high for some, most actually, but I have him at RB25 right now in my rankings. Yeah, I made a total 180. I don't know, roast me all you want, but that's what I have him.
Joe, what are your thoughts on that? Javonte at RB25, and go ahead and give us a bonus must for the Dallas Cowboys.
I am not terribly enthused by Javonte Williams, quite frankly. I was reading John Machota from The Athletic today, and he said Jaden Blue continues to flash more and more every practice, but he said, here's the exact quote: veterans Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams still remain the top two on the depth chart, but here's the kicker. Sanders has consistently stood out the most, both running and in the passing game. I also spoke to Marcus Mosher, who hosts the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Marcus is very fair in his evaluations of the Cowboys. And his assertion about a month ago was that the Cowboys' leading rusher is not currently on the team. And I've dabbled a little bit in Javonte Williams. Just be in the event that somebody's going to run the football here, right? And he might be the best option on the roster. But I've found myself drafting other players where he's coming off the board. And that leads me to the guy who I had as like kind of a value here. It's Jake Ferguson, tight end 12. I know I'm Mr. Tight End here, but in the 7 games Dak Prescott played last year, Jake Ferguson was on a 91 catch pace. They just extended him, which means they view him as a key part of their future. And we have Dak Prescott projected for the second most pass attempts in the NFL behind only Joe Burrow. I don't think it would be wild at all to see a season, given the state of the Cowboys run game, where Dak Prescott drops back 600 plus times in the event that he stays healthy. And if that's the case, Jake Ferguson, look, he'll probably end up being third on the team in targets behind CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, but you could foresee a scenario where Pickens is kind of the downfield guy. You know, CeeDee Lamb's been talking about how it helps him get open more, and maybe Jake Ferguson actually ends up second on this team in catches. So I wonder if that's something that might actually happen for them. So Ferguson is kind of the guy who I have been gravitating to as like the best value for this offense, an offense that I expect to throw the ball a hell of a lot this season.
I mean, yeah, it's a great point because Dallas, you mentioned the 600 pass attempts. George Pickens, more and more, despite the fact that he's burned me with the boomer bust games, starting to catch my eye a little bit more. But Jorge, interesting here because a lot of focus seems to be on this Dallas backfield. There's buzz around it, like it or not, but you're going to tell us why you're out on Miles Sanders. He's already low to begin with, so how is he a bust?
I mean, let's get into how is he a bust. So the past 2 seasons in yards per carry, he's averaged 3.5. He's totaled 637 rushing yards. He's averaged 5.3 fantasy points per game and half PPR scoring. He has more more fumbles than touchdowns, 3 fumbles to 1 touchdown the past 2 seasons. He seems more like a value veteran depth piece here. You mentioned Jaden Blue, somebody that you should take. I would take him over Miles Sanders. When you look at the ECR overall, he is he's running back 66. For ECR overall, he's 218. So you're moving down. And you look at the players who are kind of behind him. Anthony Richardson, quarterback. You know what? The way Richardson's been looking, I'm not saying, again, first week of training camp, hype, that being the case. And if I was in the later rounds of my draft, I may want to dabble. I would rather dabble in somebody like a Pat Bryant, though, who's coming after him. I'd rather take a late round flyer on Jaden Blue. I'd rather take a late round flyer on Jarquez Hunter for the Rams. Joe brought him up earlier, Brashard Smith for Kansas City. I'd rather give those people especially the younger players with potential for more upside, a chance to be on my roster than taking Miles Sanders. So we kind of at this point know what we're getting there. You all brought up great points in terms of the high volume passing offense that this should be, that there's only really one room for one running back. And Aidan, you brought up good points for Javonte being the guy in that backfield. So yeah, it's even at 218. No, just no.
Yeah. By the way, I don't want to say what I said about from John Machota. I don't want to say that that's an endorsement of Miles Sanders. I just think it's more if Javonte Williams can't separate himself from Miles Sanders, that's probably an issue. I don't have any interest in Miles Sanders. That's the concern I have.
100% agree.
Yeah, and I think we're going to go back to everything before we get into the Giants. I think if we're going to talk about the Dallas backfield, I'm scared of it as a whole, but if you have to go somewhere, I'd rather take a late round dart throw on Jaden Blue and see what happens, because especially in a redraft format, that's one of those, if you miss, you miss, and you just cut it. Go ahead.
They didn't re-sign Rico Dowdle.
Right.
Thank you.
He ran for 1,000 yards for them last year. And now I don't think anybody coming into the offseason would have said, oh my God, the Cowboys brought Rico Dowdle back. Yeah. But when you think of how the offseason's played out, wouldn't you rather have Rico Dowdle back on a $2 million? That's all it took to sign him to Carolina. $2 million deal for a guy who ran for 1,000 yards last year. I'd have more interest in that than the backfield that they have right now, because at the very least, if they had the same exact offseason, but say you swap out Rico Dowdle for Miles Sanders for Rico Dowdle, and you're like, all right, well, they added a pass catching back. Javonte Williams is a veteran. And they brought in Jaden Blue as an explosive rookie. You'd be like, all right. I mean, that's not what we wanted them to do, but they can work with that. I'm just stunned they didn't bring him back at this point. I don't want to screw up the show with hypotheticals, but that is a very strange move that they did not make, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I just gave you a hearty thank you, because when you have a guy who averages 4.6 yards per carry and catches almost 40 balls, and you're like, nah, we're good, but let's bring in Javonte Williams. I don't know what the market was. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't in there making the sausage on negotiations. Maybe he was being irrational and his value came back down to earth in free agency. Maybe that's it. But regardless, at the end of the day, from an outsider's perspective, it doesn't make sense whatsoever.
Yeah, 100%.
So let's get back into it. We got one team left to go, and they are the New York Football Giants. Brian Daboll, largely on the hot seat. Quarterback issues far and wide. Is it going to be Mr. Unlimited Russell Wilson? Will it be Jameis Winston? Will it be Jackson Dart? Will any of it matter at the end of the day? We're not sure. We only know of one certainty in this offense, and Joe Dolan, I think you're going to hit the nail right on the head. There's only one must-draft guy in this offense, and he's going too high for most of us to even get him. But my God, what upside on Malik Neighbors?
Yeah, Malik Neighbors is the must-draft guy. And here's the reason. We presume they're going to have a quarterback improvement here with Russell Wilson or Jackson Dart. Hopefully they have a quarterback improvement for Giants fans' sake if Jackson Dart plays. Now, of course, if I'm a fantasy player and I have Malik Neighbors on my fantasy team, I want Jameis in there, baby, because Jameis is going to fire Malik Neighbors the ball 190 times a game. But I think Jameis is the least likely of the Giants' three quarterbacks to start this year. But nonetheless, I think Malik Neighbors, he was the wide receiver 7 on a 90% route share last year. I don't see that going down. But even if he dropped in route share, he would have been 15th in fantasy points per game. Neighbors was really freaking good last year. He obviously blew away Marvin Harrison Jr. I think it's a fair price to pay in the first round. I think they'll throw the ball a lot in his direction. The depth chart beyond him is not very scary. I know Wan'Dale Robinson caught 90 passes for 123 yards last year. But Malik Neighbors is the alpha here. So Malik Neighbors is the must draft guy, and I don't think I'm breaking any news there. I wanted to say Cam Scatteraboo, but I also still kind of like Tyrone Tracy, and I'm just bitter that Cam Scatterbo did not end up on the Kansas City Chiefs, because that guy is slow Kareem Hunt, and if he was on the Chiefs, we'd be drafting him like crazy. Unfortunately, with the Giants, I'm not sure what his upside is this year.
You know, you bring the Cam Scatterbo conversation into it, Joe, and I'm just going to say this. We don't talk about Cam Scatterbo without going by his unofficial nickname, which I've given him. Because of the strong Jersey Shore vibes, Cam Scatterbo is the situation in my heart, but that's okay.
No clue what you're talking about, but
what? See, you can't say that, Aidan. Jesus, come on, man! Like, you're not that young.
That's a more colorful nickname than mine, which is Slow Kareem Hunt. No, I'm serious. I mean, watch him play and like watch Pete Kareem Hunt, and they are like the same player. I wouldn't be stunned if Scatterbo becomes like an RB2 this year. By the way, but I do kind of like Tyrone Tracy like as a player. But I don't know if Scatterbo is the kind of guy who it feels like is just going to earn his way onto the field.
Yeah, it's sneaky value with Scatterbo just because of, you know, like you said, just earn his way onto the field. And I'm so glad you bring up Tyrone Tracy, because for as much as you might like Tyrone Tracy, Aidan, at ECR running back 32, you have him as a bust this year. Productive player last year, showed some explosions, flashed a lot in times. Yet the Giants go out in the draft and they draft Cam Scatterbo. So that tells us maybe everything's not what it seems with him. So tell us why you feel that way.
Exactly. Great point about the draft prep. But Tyrone Tracy is priced at RB32 right now in ECR, and that's even still too high for me personally. If they trusted Tracy, they wouldn't have drafted Scatterbo. And for as much as Tracy is touted, especially last year as a rookie, as this electric receiving back, passing game utility back out of the backfield, he struggled mightily with fumbles and drops last year as a rookie. And Cam Scatterbo, let's just be honest about it, Scatterbo has a bigger build. He is a guy who is built for much more volume than Tyrone Tracy. I think Tyrone Tracy, unfortunately, this year is going to be relegated as a nice change of pace, you know, explosive play guy here and there this year. And I think Cam Scatterbo is going to get a bulk of the carries, maybe not right away, but he could. But after the first month or so of the season, I think he'll get a bulk of the carries as the season goes on. I think he's going to be the between the tackles volume guys. And he's a surprisingly very capable pass catcher as well. Even though he's slow in low yards after catch numbers, he's not just some like plotter out there that can't catch the football like a Tink Bigsby in Jacksonville or something. So yeah, I think Cam Scatterbo, whatever, is built for more volume. Yeah. And I know the touchdown upside is for sure going to be capped just because of the whole quarterback situation and their offensive line, and their offense as a whole kind of is bottom 5 and terrible in the NFL. But if I'm going to bet on a guy, I'm going to bet on the guy that's just bigger and bet on the guy that had more draft pedigree coming out, which he got more draft capital. Scatterbo was a 4th-round pick this year. Tracy was a 6th-round pick last year, who was a wide receiver convert out of Purdue, 2 running back that struggled with fumbles and drops last year.
I mean, I think that's completely fair assessment. And by the way, they're going essentially back to back in drafts.
They are. Yeah.
It's Scatterbo or Tracy. I've had a little bit more Tracy because in underdog, people are always chasing the upside. So like they're drafting Scatterbo maybe a round or 2 earlier, but they're going really close together, and I understand why. Yeah, Scatterbo, I just wish he landed in a better situation, because he has that kind of 3-down skill set. But yeah, I think his presence is enough to say Tyrone Tracy might be drawn dead in terms of being a valuable fantasy asset this year.
And before we get into Jorge's value player, we're going to add to the Cam Scatterbo nickname train the situation, Slow Kareem Hunt, and the Scat Pack, ladies and gentlemen, which might be the best of all 3.
That's sick. Yeah, that's
it. So Jorge.
Yeah.
Joe alluded to him, your value guy. I think he mentioned him having 90 catches and 123 yards. Not quite accurate, but close enough. So tell me why at wide receiver 67, you're in on Wan'Dale Robinson. I know 140 targets is a lot. It's also a lot to replicate whenever you have a guy like Malik Neighbors, who honestly I'm expecting to see even more targets this coming season.
So I'm going to give you a number, 28 or 28th to be specific. That is where the New York Giants pass blocking unit ranked last year. Whoever is the quarterback, sans Jameis Winston, because I think we can all say that it doesn't matter what the offensive line is doing. Jameis Winston is going to huck it, chuck it, throw the football down the field all night. Yes, whether it's Russell Wilson, who we saw last year in Pittsburgh, his short to intermediate passing game helped to kind of bring back Pat Freiermuth, or at least revive Pat Freiermuth to being a fantasy relevant tight end towards the middle and end of last season. This short to intermediate passing game for a rookie in Jackson Dart will come in very happy, and that's right around Wan'Dale Robinson's area on the field. ECR 67 and half PPR at wide receiver. Yes, he had 140 targets last year, and you know what? Only 93 receptions. So that's not exactly great. We're looking at a 66% completion percentage. And here's where I'm cheating. Like, even in half PPR, in full PPR, yes, definitely a value in full PPR just because of the reception, just because of the target volume. And you did mention Rhett, Malik Neighbors. Even with Malik Neighbors, the guy was getting commanding attention of 140 targets. And even if he got 120 targets, I'd still be okay with having him as a value currently where he's at. And let's face it, I'm not excited about Jalen Hyatt. I'm not excited about Darius Slayton. The only receiving option, I'm not Theo Johnson. I'm not exactly jumping up and down for Theo Johnson at the tight end position. Penn Stater from Canada, if memory serves me correctly. I don't know why I just remember that fact right now, but hey, it just popped in there. So here we are.
Yeah, I'm a Penn State guy, so he is from Canada.
All right, so there we go.
By the way, I've been drafting him a ton, but he's like tight end 31. Like, he's not getting drafted in most redraft leagues.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm going with Wan'Dale right here as my value here for the wide receiver for the New York Giants.
Yeah, and I mean, you make a fair point. Whoever it is at the end of the day, if it's Russell Wilson, you can expect some more short targets. If it's Jackson Dart, you can probably expect some more manufactured passes there to make sure it's nice and safe for him to get some rhythm. If it's Jameis Winston, though, at any point during the year, you could throw your Wan'Dale Robinson stock right out the window, burn it, do what you got to do. Just get the hell rid of it in those Jameis Winston weeks, because, my God, that will not be ideal. Keep in mind, this is the man that gave Chris Olave a 330 air yard week in his rookie season. So shout out Jameis Winston for making fantasy football fun.
Absolutely. I mean, he resurrected Jerry Jeudy, or not even resurrected. Like
he surrected him.
He surrected. Yeah, exactly.
He put him on the map.
He put him on the map. Thank you. And that's where I was trying to go with. There you go.
That's funny, guys. All right. So we've gone through our must, bust, and value players in the NFC East. For the Eagles, we said Dallas Goedert was your must. Aidan said there were no busts because everyone was appropriately valued. And Jorge said Devonta Smith would be his value player. For the Commanders, Brian Robinson the must, Terry McLaurin the bust, and Zach Ertz as your value. In Dallas, Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders made up your must and bust, and Jake Ferguson as your value. And then in New York, no surprise, Malik Neighbors as your must draft. A bust, Tyrone Tracy with extensive Cam Scatterboot conversation. Who you going to take? Find out after week 1. We'll see where it goes. And then Wan'Dale Robinson as your value. But before we get out of here, let's get into some bold predictions for the NFC East here in 2025. And Joe, I'm going to start off with you. Yeah. You're wearing the Philly Fanatics hat, so the city's close to your heart. Go ahead and tell me your hot take for the Eagles in 2025.
This isn't as hot as it sounds. Jalen Hurts sets a career high in passing touchdowns this year. Now, his career high is only 23. But look, last year he threw for 18, okay, but he also missed essentially 3 games. He missed most of the second Washington game and then the final 2 games of the regular season. So he could have gotten to this number if he just played 2 more games. Here's another stat, and I think this coincides really interestingly with the fact that the Eagles have an absolutely brutal schedule this year. First place schedule, but then they're also crossing over to the AFC West, which is going to be a very competitive division here. In the 2024 regular season, Jalen Hurts was 36th, guys, in the NFL in fourth quarter and overtime pass attempts. 36th. He threw fewer fourth quarter and overtime pass attempts than Cooper Rush did last year. In his last 10 healthy games, all games the Eagles won, he was 39th with 34 fourth quarter and overtime pass attempts. Over the same span, he led all quarterbacks with 12 kneel downs. So he essentially had just 1/3 the number of pass attempts as he did kneel downs. It was wild what Jalen Hurts, the game scripts were last year. They have a much harder schedule this year. They might be a better team than last year. I don't think they're going to be, but they might be. But that might not reflect in the box score just because of the harder schedule. I think Jalen Hurts gets up and above 23 passing touchdowns for a career high in passing touchdowns for Jalen Hurts this year.
I love that you brought up the game script thing, because with teams like the Eagles, for those top of the heap teams and those bottom of the barrel teams, dude, it matters. If you're in the middle of the pack, okay, whatever. But I mean, if you have somebody who plays ahead constantly, I mean, you have to take those things into account. If you have a team that's playing from behind, you expect them to pass the ball a little bit more. These are the little sort of finer things that make a good player a great player in fantasy football. So I'm glad you brought that up, Joe. Jorge, the Washington Commanders, give us your bold prediction for them here in 2025.
I think Zach Ertz firmly finishes as a top 12 tight end in half PPR scoring for 2025. We talked about the concerns with Terry McLaurin, the regression there. Deebo Samuel. What do we have in Deebo Samuel? And we, as in, because of course, when I say we, I am a Washington Commander fan. Zach Ertz was a reliable target there for Jaden Daniels. We were, Aidan, you brought up the Mason Taylor, situation at LSU with Jaden Daniels just targeting these tight ends. The chemistry is there. They brought him back on this 1-year deal because, both Ertz and the Commanders saw what was going on with their relationship between him and Jaden Daniels on the field. And it just, the way tight end is, assuming you're not playing in a tight end premium league, you got to take all the advantages you can get. You got to take the targets where they are. And just, by default, there's always somebody who's on the outside of the tight end 12 of the top 12 tight end that could very easily jump in and screw with people's rankings from week to week. But I think Zach Ertz not only finishes as a top 12 tight end, he could even finish as a top 10.
Oh, that is a little bit spicy, Jorge. But Aidan, we talked about bold takes, and my man, you didn't just go bold, like
Overboard, yeah.
You went to Mars, baby. So tell us about your bold take here in 2025 for the Dallas Cowboys.
You guys, so I explained earlier my enthusiasm and how bullish I am for Dallas Cowboys' new running back via free agent addition, Javonte Williams. So I'm going to die on this hill that he has a huge bounce back season, and Javonte Williams finishes as a top 24 running back in 2025 fantasy football. And hold on, I'm adding something here at the last second. More I talk about and think about it. And if he truly does become that volume guy that we want in a seemingly high-powered Dallas Cowboys offense, I think he could have an outside chance as a top 20 RB finish. I'm dying on that hill. Definitely top 24, outside chance or top 20.
We got a bleeder.
So let's just put this out ahead of time. Aidan, if this take doesn't come to pass, you might end up on the Fantasy Receipts Twitter account, and that's fine. But at least you'll know you made it at that point.
Flip it for if it does happen, or if it doesn't happen, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I've been in the fantasy industry for like 15 years, and I don't think I've ever ended up on that account. Either that means I'm a pristine analyst, or I haven't made it yet. So
is that a real account? Is that actually a real?
You never heard of Fantasy Receipts?
Yeah, of course.
Oh my god.
Oh. You guys send me it.
Yeah, post show, check it out. It's insane. All right, so let's close off our hot takes with the New York Giants. And there's not much bold about saying that Malik Neighbors is going to have a lot of targets. There's not much bold about saying Malik Neighbors might lead the league in targets. Where I'm going with this, we're going to take it to a different stratosphere. The targets record. Joe, do you know the targets record off the top of your head?
I don't. I don't know if it's Michael Thomas on account of Michael Thomas has the receptions record, but he was super highly efficient. So I don't know if he has the targets record.
Yeah. The targets record is Marvin Harrison, 2002. 2,205 targets. Yeah. Guys, if the Giants throw the ball as much as I think they're going to throw the ball this year, that record could fall. Malik had 170 in his rookie year last year. To say 205 targets in a 17-game season, give or take, he misses a couple, is an extra, 2 to 3 targets a game? That's not outlandish. So it's very possible that Malik Neighbors could lead the league in targets, set the all-time record, and because of quarterback inefficiency, not finish as the wide receiver 1. That's my bold take.
And
that's very interesting.
He got 170 last year. He missed a couple of games due to a concussion even. So
yeah. But at the same time, he also averaged 11 yards per reception last year.
So you're not seeing much value in these targets, though.
I'm not seeing much value in the targets because he wasn't hyper efficient with the targets last year. So it was a volume play, which great. You need volume in fantasy football.
Love it. Yeah.
All right. So before we get out of here, guys, I know Joe has somewhere else he needs to be. He loves us, but not that much. Let's talk about our friends, our best ball friends at Fast Draft. Make sure you download the Fast Draft app and use that promo code FRAMES. That's going to earn you a first-time deposit match of up to $50 in credits. There's the Origin game. You draft only rookies. Flex 4, take your favorite players for the upcoming season. Their DF game, the Jorge special, as I like to call it, just like Flex 4, but IDP only, 20-second timers, PPR formatted, 6-round best ball. You're in and out in no time. You're scratching that itch, and you're also winning some money in the same time. So that promo code is FRAMES. Once again, $50 first-time deposit match. Fast app, Fast Draft. Start drafting faster, ladies and gentlemen. So, Joe, before we get out of here, we got a few minutes. Go ahead and plug whatever it is you need to plug, my man.
That's well, Fantasy Points is obviously we're preparing for a big season at Fantasy Points and our Fantasy Points YouTube and our podcast network. But of course, you can find my work on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 7 to 8 a.m. Eastern. And I am pleased to announce that Paul Kelly and I will be back on Game Day this year. That will be the 16th year of the Game Day show. This is the 16th season of Fantasy Sports Radio. It will be the 16th season of the Game Day show as well. A show I've been hosting since day one on the channel, and I'm pleased that will be coming back. So that's where you can find my work, and I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah.
Happy to have you as always, man. Every time you come, you're bringing solid content. You're bringing good vibes, and you know the door is open for you. Anytime you want to come, just slip the boss man a DM. He'll be happy to accommodate you, bud. Thanks for coming tonight.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Aidan, what do you got going on right now, man?
Yeah, I mentioned at the top, but obviously we're rolling out division previews next week at fantasyandframes.com. So for me specifically, that means the AFC East division preview, as I'm actually a Buffalo Bills fan, as you can see behind me. So it was great since I know those teams, but it was great tackling a fantasy perspective for all 4 teams in the division, the Bills, the Patriots, so on and so forth. Some very intriguing offenses, a couple up-and-coming offenses, maybe a declining offense, and an already established offense. So I can't wait for that release and can't wait for you guys to check it out on the site next week.
And Jorge, we'll see you again in 2 minutes for Shoot the Gap.
In literally 2 minutes. As soon as this ends, we're doing Shoot the Gap, or IDP podcast here on Fantasy and Frames, wherever you're watching. You can check out for my IDP previews next week as well. And I just want to give a shout out to Joe. Thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it. I know you got to go, but thank you very much.
Thanks so much, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course. And of course, we will be back next week looking at the NFC West with Football Guys Tip Major. Before we get out of here, you can find Joe's work at FG Dolan on X, Aidan Weingartner at AidWeingartner13, Jorge at Jorge B. Edwards. I'm Rhett Manuel. We're Fourth and Frames. Toodles.